Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most and do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
Welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Brad Chandler. Brad got his introduction into real estate when he read a book in 9th grade on how to buy houses. And in 2002, an investor bought his neighbor's house in Vienna, Georgia. After talking with the investor, he decided to start Express Home Buyers. 20 years later, Express Home Buyers has bought and sold 4,000 homes across the country and runs primarily without his involvement. Brad's main focus is making an impact on team members and clients he serves. In early 2021, he went through a major life transformation and found freedom and happiness through self-love. In 2022, he became, because of his profound shift, he felt obligated to share this path with others and started Brad Chandler Coaching. So I can't wait to jump into that, but welcome to the show, Brad.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
Yeah, absolutely. I always start with kind of your background, where you grew up, and what led you to real estate. It looks like fairly young age.
Yeah, so I grew up in Virginia. That was actually Vienna. That must have been a typo. That was Vienna, Virginia, where I bought my first house. I read a book in 9th grade called How to Buy Real Estate with No Money Down by a gentleman named Robert Allen, who I had the pleasure of getting to meet after all of those years 2 weeks ago to Mastermind in Florida.
Oh,
So
sweet.
I knew at that time I wanted to do real estate because I wanted to make a ton of money, and I didn't know why, but we'll touch that later when we get into the coaching. So 9th grade, yeah, I read that book, and then I don't know, fast forward to 2002, and that investor bought my neighbor's house. I went and talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, I buy houses from distressed sellers at below market. I fix them up and resell them." And I was like, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read that book, but this is what I'm going to do. So, Keith, I spent 8 long months trying to find my first deal. Each month that went by, I got more and more persistent. And then in July of 2003, I bought my first house. In July and August of 2003, I somehow managed to buy 6 houses. And then in October, I went to my boss without telling my wife at the time. And I said, I quit. I'm starting Express Home Buyers. I came home and told my wife, and she's like, "Are you crazy? We have a newborn son. I've got 2 kids, two other kids from previous marriages. We got to support. Like, what are you thinking?" And I'm like, "It'll be fine." And we're not still married, but it's fine. Here we are 4,000 houses later, and it's been a blessing.
That might have been one of the causes for that. I'm kidding. Wow.
No, definitely
yeah.
not.
You definitely jumped into it. So that's fantastic. And so you said you bought your initial one after talking to the investor. Tell me maybe a little bit more about that first one, and did you already have it sold before you bought the next, or what did that look like for you, Brad?
Yeah, so I think the first one I ever did, was I believe was a VA foreclosure, Veterans Administration foreclosure. And the only thing I want to tell you on that is that the realtor probably made more money than I did because he double-ended it. He required, and looking back, it's so funny, but he's like, all right, I'm going to be the buyer the agent that's going to help you buy this. And then when you resell it, you have to list with me. And I'm like, okay, I got to list with you. So he probably made more money than I did. But a transaction that was really interesting was I bought I think my second house was a house in Arlington that, and here's actually it was the third house. How I got it is the second house I bought, I put a We Buy Houses sign in the front yard, and someone called me, and someone had taught me, one of my mentors, like, instead of hanging up, ask everyone you know, do they know someone who wants to buy or sell their house? So she called me wanting to buy it. I said, it's already sold, but do you know anyone else? And she goes, yeah, my mother has a house in Arlington, and she was a truck driver. And I think she was drinking. It was like a Friday night. And I go, what does your mom want for the house? And she goes, 230. And I'm thinking, $230,000 for a house in Arlington? Okay. She's like, but let me call her. She calls me back like an hour later. She's like, oh, she said she'll take 180 for it. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I think that was my third house. And of course I thought it would sell for something probably 50 grand higher. And I thought the renovation was probably 50 grand less, but I still ended up making $60,000, which was what I was making all year at my job.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that really helped kind of solidify the fact that this was the direction you wanted to go. How did you ramp it up from there? And, with 4,000 houses, I assume that at some point you kind of built a team, but maybe that's a bad assumption. Tell us a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, early on, that house in Arlington, like I said, I put a We Buy Houses sign in front of the other house that got me the house in Arlington. So I put another We Buy Houses sign in front of that house. And this guy calls me and he's like, do you want to go to lunch? And I'm like, sure. Because I was looking for a partner back then because, one, I had a negative $80,000 net worth from graduate school. And two, I didn't want to be the guy working 100 hours a week. I wanted a partner. So we went and had a cheesesteak at this Latino cheesesteak place that still this day is probably the best chicken cheesesteak I've ever had in my life. And over like lunch, we decided we were going to get into business together. He had 10 grand. And I'm like, I want to do TV advertising. So we started this partnership back in 2003. And we were both doing everything at first. We had no idea what we were doing, of course. And one day I came to the office. I'm like, you know what, Judd? Why don't you start doing the construction side of the business and let me handle all the acquisitions, and you can get them fixed up and sold. I'll do the marketing, I'll do the sales. He's like, great. So then we did that. We spent a little bit more money, and then we're like, well, we need an admin. Then we hired an admin, and then we hired a salesperson. And we just kept growing. And as we kept growing, we just started adding more people and systematizing what they did.
Fantastic. Okay. And you're still in business today and still doing that. I know you're doing a lot of the coaching and stuff, but the flipping and stuff is still going. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We did 253 houses last year. And then this year, really? We're probably going to be off about 10%, but we're still having a great year.
Okay. Fantastic. And what price range are you focused on? And, a lot of folks that I've been talking with in some of my masterminds have been, that are flipping or kind of seeing it sit on the market a little bit longer. And I just had a flip that just hit the market. So it's been on less than a week. And that's made me a little bit nervous, but hopefully it'll go good for us.
So we're about 70% of the medium average price around here. So, we're for the stuff we're fixing and putting on the market, probably in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. And we are not seeing anything sit on the market here in DC. It is incredible. If you would have told me a year ago that interest rates would have been at 8% and we would have had people in multiple bid situations on houses, I would have been like, no, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. Right. But the inventory is so low that you are always going to have a subset of buyers that want to buy and want to live the American dream and want to get the tax write-off. And I think a lot of these people are thinking, I'll just buy it at 8%. And when it goes back to 3%, I'll just refinance it. No big deal. Well, they may be waiting a long time because Charlie Munger, who is Buffett's partner, said that that he thinks this is an inflection point. For 40 years, interest rates have trended downward. He says he wouldn't be surprised if the next 40 years they went up. And if you when people say I'm going to wait till the interest rate gets back to normal and refinance, do you know what the normal interest rate is over the last 40 years? It's like 6.75%.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I can remember
something like that.
Getting in real estate around 99, and back then it was like 8%. So it's not that bad right now when
No.
you measure it up against that. But when you measure it up against 2.5% and stuff, then it there's a little bit more of a challenge, and it takes just a little bit more for people to kind of wrap their head around. So
Yeah.
but it sounds like not so much in your area. So that's awesome. What about, I'm sure you've learned some lessons along the way. I love the one you've already shared about, just, asking when you're talking with somebody, a potential buyer, asking them if they know anybody that's looking to sell. And then just putting the sign in front of the house as well. Those are just two great tips, but I'm sure there's been a lot of them along the way that you've learned as to what works and what doesn't when it comes to flipping homes.
Oh, wow. I mean, this could, I could probably spend 10 hours on the subject. One of the things we did, well, not early on, Story Brand is a great company. They help corporations create their own story. And one of the things I'm going to tell you, it's going to ruin every movie you ever watch, but there's always a character, and that
Mm-hmm.
character has an internal problem and an external problem. So it's always the internal problem that they call you about. So you should always be focused on the internal problem from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective. So let's just use cutting grass as an example. The grass is high as an external. They're worried about their dinner guests coming over or their neighbors or the HOA finding them. So they're nervous, they're embarrassed. That's their internal. That's why they call you. They don't call you because their grass is high. So as a marketer, you always have to focus on that. So the character has a problem. They meet a guide. The guide gives them a plan and a call to action. And then they either follow the plan and live happily ever after, or they don't, and tragedy ensues. So you get to, as a business owner, or now in my coaching business, I use this too. You get to be the hero of your own family or your business, because we each are living our own movies. It's a story of our lives, and so many human beings are in this hypnosis state every day of society, where they get up and they go to a job they don't like, and they come home and they fight with the spouse, they kick the dog, they drink 3 glasses of wine, and they have no idea, and they just stay in this shitty rut over and over and every day. And I'm here to tell you, because I've done it, and I've helped close to 100 people do it. You get to rewrite or write whatever story you want. So no matter whatever struggle you're going through, you don't have to struggle. And here's my brain and my passion going. You're gonna have to reel me back to real estate, because I so much like to help people. You asked the question about I didn't even do this. This was unconsciously going towards the freedom and happiness.
Lessons along the way. But I think the book that you're referring to, and I guess I know he has a program as well, but I think it's Donald Miller, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Story Brand that covers that, and it's really, really a good one.
And
So actually, I had a recommendation. When I started my podcast, somebody recommended it to me. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. So we're going to we just hired a marketing consultant, and we're going to re-engage StoryBrand after 10 years to re-StoryBrand everything. So where was I going with that? I was going with that it's really, really important that you stand above the crowd, and that you differentiate yourself in a very, very crowded space. And when you talk to your sellers, you come at it from a focus of impact, and not about how much money can I make from the seller. It's how can I impact them? And I've made that shift in my business because of my life transformation. That why did I get into real estate in 9th grade? Because I thought by making a lot of money, it would bring me happiness and it would bring me worthiness that I didn't even know that I was feeling at the time, but I was feeling unworthy. And what I've learned along the way is money can never, ever, ever bring you happiness. So just focus on, when I shifted 2.5 years ago from making money to prove my worth and trying to chase happiness to, okay, you know what? I don't need to chase anything. I'm just enough as I am. I switched to making an impact, Keith. And now that I focus on impact, guess what? My net worth in the last 2 years has risen exponentially higher than any other 2 years, because I'm not chasing the money. I'm chasing what I'm really chasing is, how can I help change people's lives? Whether it's a seller, my employee, a coaching client.
Yeah, it makes sense. It kind of reminds me of the Zig Ziglar quote, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And it's a different approach, right? As you're interacting with folks, trying to find not what they do for you, but what you can do for them at a service. So that's
Amen.
great. All right. Well, before we get off the real estate part, I do want to hear maybe some other things that you've just learned. More curious for myself than probably my audience, being that we've just started our flipping business. Some things that you felt like, gosh, maybe you've done and they didn't go well, and you learned from it, or things that went well and you just kind of doubled down on them.
Yeah, so renovations are really, really hard, the hardest part of the business. And renovating one house is hard enough. Renovating 5 houses at one time isn't 5 times harder, it's like 25 times harder. So what I've learned over and over and over again, it seems like we never stop making this mistake, although I guess we haven't made it in the last couple of years, is you give a house to a contractor, they do a phenomenal job. So then you give them 2 houses, and then they completely blow up, or 3 houses. So just because a contractor can do one house really good doesn't mean they can do 2, 3, 4, or 5 at a time. So be really, really careful when it comes to that. Another really important thing is, as the market's declining, most people listening to this have never seen a decline in market. We went through 2008, 2012. We know what a decline in market is. Most people haven't seen it. When you're underwriting deals, you got to look at the actives, because they're actually more important than the solds. You can look at a comp that is, $300,000. A neighbor's house just sold for $300,000, and then you buy the house based on that. You do your renovations, and 2 months later, there's a house that's $275,000 that's listed. Do you think you can still go put a $300,000 price tag on yours? No. You got to look at the actives. So make sure in a stable or declining market that you're paying a lot more attention to the actives than you are the solds.
That's great advice for sure. Yeah, and I'd take it maybe a little bit further, and just say also just looking at days on the market, which is, again, it sounds like your area. Maybe you don't have to worry as much about that. But if somebody has a house that's active, but it's been on the market, for beyond what the average time is, then there's a good indication that it's a little bit too high as far as price goes. So
Absolutely. And this is another thing that I think we learned very, very early on, but man, have I heard so many investors say it. So the house is priced at whatever, make up a number, $300,000, and it's not selling. And they're like, but I've got $300,000 into it. If I lower the price, I'm going to lose money. Okay. The market doesn't care what you have into the house. Cut your losses, because the longer you keep it at 300, the more money you're going to lose, because you're holding on to it, and no one's going to buy it if it's worth 250 or 275 and it's listed at 300. And people are like, oh, well, they'll put in an offer. No, people aren't like us real estate investors. If they see 300, they may not offer 250 or 275. Price the house at what it should sell, despite what you have into it. If your renovations took longer and it cost more, that doesn't mean that, okay, I'm going to price my house 15 grand higher. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That was a struggle for years and years. You mentioned 2008, and I was a real estate broker at that time. Still am a real estate broker, but that's not what I do full time. But at that time, that was my lifeline, and I can just remember listing and selling houses. And that was always a challenge. There was always that seller that wanted to list their house at this higher price than you're recommending, just hoping that maybe somebody will buy it. And in their mind, they're saying, well, similar to what you said, they can always bring an offer, or they can, offer less, but you burn up that initial newness to the market. And the longer it stays on, the more you're going to have to adjust that price to get it sold. So.
Yep.
So
price it at the price it should be, and let the market do its thing.
That's right. Exactly. I'll tell you what, why don't we go into your story, Brad, and kind of, on how you changed your life, and, kind of the self-love, and just kind of your record, what happened there. Tell us about your story.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. I wasn't even looking for change. I thought that my 2 marriages that didn't work out was normal. I thought it was their fault. I used to use weed or alcohol on a daily basis. I was like, everyone else does too. What's the big deal? I had 2 kids with behavioral problems or anxiety. I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just kind of the way it is, right? I didn't always eat right. I worked out a lot, but I wasn't consistent all the time. I always had excuses, or I'd drink too much and wouldn't want to go up the next day. So I wasn't even looking for it. And my son had anxiety, and in trying to get him help, I was on a Zoom call with a performance coach, and she's like, "You have a tick." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You blink a lot when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unresolved childhood trauma that is causing your son's anxiety. Do you want to come out and work with myself and my husband?" And I'm like, "Sure." I was like thinking, how could I be affecting my son? But I went out there. And in the course of a weekend, really in the course of 3 hours, my life forever changed. I mean,
Hmm.
forever changed. I came back and I was feeling like a different person. I looked around at my network and my family and my friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I just figured out the secret to happiness and the secret to life. And all of these people who are suffering, oh my gosh, they're just like me. Some of them know they're suffering because they're on antidepressant or anxiety drugs, but there's a
Hmm.
whole subset of people like me that's just kind of like, oh, well, this is just how life is. People get married, people get divorced, they have shitty marriages, blah, blah, whatever, right? And
Right.
what I've learned, so I came home after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I was like, oh my God, I got to learn more. I got to take this to a new level. So I started studying and researching. And then I started telling my story. And people are like, wow, you're really good at this. Like, I go to therapy and I'm hearing more stuff than I've gotten out of therapy. So then I started taking on coaching clients. And I've studied thousands and thousands of hours. And Keith, what I've figured out, and here's the secret to life, is that every problem you have is a thinking problem. And where was that thinking problem created? Because you weren't born with this thinking problem. You went through some type of situation or series of situations in your childhood where you felt no control, you felt lack of love, you felt stressed, you felt trauma, and you came up with a story or a meaning around that. Why is this
Hmm.
bad thing happening to me? Your brain was likely saying, because I deserve it, or there's something bad to me. And this is all in the unconscious mind, by the way, because what is it doing? It's giving you hope for tomorrow. If I'm bad and I don't get the love I want, all I have to do is be good and I can get the love that I want. So the secret is you go find those situations, you use neuroplasticity to turn it around, and then you practice it on a daily basis. You reinforce it. It's called the 3 R's: recognition, awareness of what's driving the behavior you want to change,
Hmm.
rewiring it, where you basically tell yourself a new story by listening to recording, and third, reinforcing it. So every time you have a negative emotion, I've created this tool called the Joy Regenerator, where you just run through this process. Because anytime you feel a negative emotion, Keith, you're in fight or flight, and you're going back to your childhood to bring in that meaning from that scene to the argument. So if you argue with your wife, it's never, ever, ever about the actual argument. It's about something from your past that you're bringing in. So that's it. I mean, we can, there's, yeah.
Yeah, let's maybe talk a little bit more about that. So you went to kind of try to solve a problem with your son, and here it opened your mind to some things. What were some of the things that you felt like you were holding on to, that you recognized after kind of going through that process?
So, one thing I didn't know, because 95% of our daily behavior is driven by our subconscious thoughts. So, I didn't even know what I was hanging on to. What I found out that I was hanging on to is that my father didn't treat me the best, because he didn't know how to based on his childhood. So, he would hit me with a belt. He would make fun of me. I would be made fun of in school for having a big head, and then I'd have to come home at night and listen to him make fun of me. Um, my parents always fought, so it was a very unsettling, time. They always fought about money. My dad spent a lot of money, and showed his love through money. And so, what did I held on to when I'm getting hit or I'm being made fun of? What do you think that little 6-year-old boy is saying? When a child feels that a parent stops loving them, they don't stop loving the parent; they stop loving themselves. So, my coping mechanism was, look, this is my dad. He's my idol. If he's doing this to me, I must deserve it. Something's wrong with me. So I held on to the I'm not enough. And that's what caused my 2 marriages not to work out. That's what caused
Hmm.
me to smoke marijuana and drink and not feel comfortable. Another thing I didn't mention to you, Keith, is that I made 5 business mistakes that cost me $9 million. When I look back, every one of those were chasing my worth, trying to prove that I was enough. So that's what I was holding on to. And I did the work. So when you don't feel enough, you lack self-love. So I now have extreme self-love. It doesn't mean I'm a narcissist or I think I'm any better than anyone else, just the opposite. It just means that I love the person who I am at my essence. And I don't beat myself up anymore. When someone says something that could have offended me in the past, it doesn't offend me anymore because I don't need to prove myself. If you're fighting with your wife all the time, it's because you don't feel enough. Your
Right.
wife could say the same thing to me that would piss you off and make you yell and scream and go drink 6 beers. And I'd just be like, well, she's just saying that because she's hurt. Let's talk through this.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And so, what are some practical things that people can do to kind of see that see how this is affecting their own lives?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to mention those 3 R's again because these 3 R's are missing from 95% of psychiatry, psychology, therapy, life coaching. And that's why you go to the same therapist for 30 years like I did and get nowhere. Recognition. You've got to know what's causing. Like I had no idea what was causing me and my behavior and all my missteps, right? So the number one thing is awareness. So how do you start? If you're listening to this and you're like, I love myself, I've got high self-esteem, I don't care what other people say. That's exactly what I would have said 3 years ago listening to this, but it was all a lie. So I developed this 3-minute quiz. It takes it's 12 questions, 3 minutes, bradchandler.com/quiz. It will tell you your level of self-esteem and self-love. So number one is begin with awareness. If you take that quiz and you get extreme self-love, there's very little I can do for you, probably because your life is like, you're probably in good shape. Probably have good relationships. You probably have your life's purpose dialed in. But if you have if you have mild self-love or lack of self-love, know that it's got to be affecting everything in your life to some degree negatively, including your kids. So if your kids have behavioral problems or anxiety or depression, or they act out in school and you want to find the cause of it, just go grab your spouse and go into the bathroom and look in the mirror because you are likely a cause of it. Is that me saying you're a bad person? Just the opposite. It's not your fault. You, like me, I didn't even know. I've been a single dad for 12 years, Keith. I did everything for my kids, but I didn't know when I felt my lack of worthiness, it's impossible not to push that down to them. So awareness is number one. Absolute awareness is number one. Number two is figure it out. Like go do the work and figure out what in your childhood were your needs not met and what stories did you tell yourself? And then you start telling yourself a different story. I just threw up this webpage for this exact reason, bradchandler.com/start. And it's got meditations on there. One is a meditation. It's all free. One is you do it in the morning and one is at night. And the one at night is called, as you go to sleep at night, it's called I Am Enough. Because what I've learned, Keith, is that almost every single human being to some degree has this I'm not enough. Some people have it real bad and they're addicted to meth. Some people have it just a little bit. And so everything in their life is just a little bit off. So,
yeah, that's interesting for sure, and I think that's good advice. So on yours, and kind of going back again to your childhood, did you realize some of those things through meditation, or how did you come up with them?
yeah, so we did so the tool that I use now that I think is the best tool on the planet, I use hypnosis. I've become a certified hypnotherapist.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I'd been like, what? No, because why? It's not what people think. It's not like the stage where you're chasing around a mountain. All it is a deeply relaxed state so that you can access your subconscious mind and clear out all the clutter. So I did something very similar in my process. It's just getting into a deeply, deeply relaxed state. And some people can do it on their own. Some people need guidance. Some people need them to ask the questions. Hey, what are these times? Let's talk about these times. What is the scene in your life that caused you to drink too much, whatever your issue is, depression, anxiety, OCD, and your subconscious mind will 99% of the time go back to 3 or 4 or 5 powerful scenes that were the cause of whatever the issue you have today is. It's remarkable. I see it over and over and over again. And there are more times than you think where the client doesn't even consciously remember the things that happen. And sometimes they're small and sometimes they're big. Sometimes it's, I was left in a crib and they never thought about it. So that's the beauty of hypnosis, is that you can actually go back and find the source of whatever your issue is today. And then you just tell yourself a different story. You tell yourself the truth. As human beings, you can't suffer when you live in the truth. We so often live in the untruth that we're not enough, that we don't belong, that we're not deserving of business success or love or a good partner.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've heard so much good stuff about hypnosis, but haven't ever tried it myself. But I think that would be an interesting exercise to do for sure. What are some other things besides hypnosis that people can identify some of these things with? And then, I guess more importantly, what are some of the processes that they can put into place to try to, start correcting them and overcoming them?
Fabulous question. So on that, I kind of got sidetracked. bradchandler.com/start. There's a couple meditations. So definitely start doing those, because the more that you meditate, there are so many countless benefits to meditation. One that I just read is, I don't know if you know what a telomere is, but it's attached to your chromosome. The longer your telomere, the longer you're going to live. The shorter your telomere, the shorter you're going to live. They have found that increasing meditation increases your length of your telomeres. It also turns down something in your brain called the default mode network. The default mode network is turned way up with people with anxiety and depression, and way down in like people that meditate, like monks that meditate all the time. So start with the awareness of the self-love quiz, then start doing the meditations. And then I developed this thing. It's on this page too, bradchandler.com/start. It's called the Joy Regenerator. And it's a process. When you feel a negative emotion, you pause and you take a couple deep breaths to get yourself into the present moment. Because remember, when you're in a negative emotion, you're in fight or flight. So you're going back to the past to look at dangers. Your brain's doing its job and it's bringing it into the present. Just like 1,000 years ago, a lion attacked me. I see a lion. My memory goes back. That's why your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between time, because it doesn't. If it did, you would be at danger. So when you're in this fight or flight state, when you feel a negative emotion, take a couple deep breaths and then identify the emotion by saying, I am feeling whatever the emotion is. Not I am, because that's an identity. I am feeling. By just saying that, you're going from your fight or flight to your thinking brain, because you've got to think about what you're feeling. It's a brain hack. Then you give yourself compassion, because as a child, most of us didn't get compassion for our emotions. We were told, don't cry, stop pouting. So you give yourself compassion for the emotion. Then you try to figure out where it came from. Well, for me, let's say that my daughter doesn't do the dishes. I get upset. I say, why am I upset? I feel like she's disrespecting me. She doesn't love me. Oh my gosh, this is how my dad made me feel. So the thought is, well, let me stop there. So that's where it's coming from. As I'm processing this, Keith, I'm coming up with 3 things I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that my child is healthy. I'm grateful that she has limbs to unload the dishwasher. And I'm grateful that she lives with me 100% of the time. And then I go, what was the thought that triggered all this? The thought that triggered all this was, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. And I ask myself, is that true? The answer is no. So boom, I snap myself right back into joy. Now, here's where it gets really good if you're in a relationship or a marriage. When this happens, when your spouse does something that makes you feel this emotion, rather than yelling at her or him or going and drinking a bunch of beer or going and doing whatever you do, here's what you say. You say, Sally, what you just said made me feel sad. It's not your fault, but will you help me process it? And then conflict brings you closer together rather than farther apart, because guess what? If you're in a relationship that's not working, it has nothing to do with the actual relationship. It has to do with the relationship that you each have with each other, with your individual selves. So if you're like, I had a happy childhood, I can't remember anything bad. Well, if your spouse says something that pisses you off, that's your childhood memory coming back into the present. So you can short circuit it by working together with your spouse, because you can actually get to heal together. And healing with a spouse in an intimate relationship is far better than any therapy you can ever go to, if you've got 2 people that are willing to do the work together.
Yeah, for sure. Have you gone back to any of your ex-wives and just kind of talked through some of that stuff with them, or not?
I have. I actually did a hypnosis session for with my first wife.
Uh-huh.
I've had a brief conversation with my second wife, just saying everything has changed, and I'm sorry for anything that I did to hurt you. Now,
Right.
again, I pick people that had trauma as well, because if you lack self love, there's no chance you're ever going to go pick someone with extreme self love. What we do is we just continue the pattern over and over and over again. I was involved in this multi generational curse probably for hundreds and hundreds of years. What's the greatest gift that you can give your child? It's to break this multi generational curse. How do you do that? You do that by teaching your child how to love themselves unconditionally. How can you teach your child to love themselves unconditionally if you don't? So when people come to me and they say, "Can you help my child?" I say, "Yes, but I need to help you first, because I can take your child and fix and heal them. But as soon as I put them back into the broken environment that caused it, they're going to go right back to it." So again, not an indictment on the parent, but just to know, if you really want to fix your behavioral problems in your children, they're from you. So you just need to heal yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, but also, it's just in life in general. I love what you said on several of these, where if you are wondering what's going on with your kids, go and look in the mirror. It's the same thing with, I have a sales team, and if I don't convey properly how I want them to do something, and they don't do it the way I'm expecting, rather than get mad, what I've kind of done is started to kind of reflect me and look at myself as the reason. So obviously I didn't communicate this well enough for the team to understand. So versus just getting frustrated with them. And so I love a lot of what you're saying there. What are some other
Well,
things, Brett?
Keith, let me touch on that curiosity. So great job on that, because what you're doing is you're getting curious rather than using judgment and fear. You get curious. So if you just took this one thing away from this podcast, instead of judging people, "That's crazy. I can't believe my freaking employee did that." Just be curious. Be like, why is it that I gave instructions and they didn't hear me? Was it my fault? Did I not write it out? How can I change it? Why is it that when my spouse does this, this, or this, I get really triggered? Why is it that I come home and drink 6 glasses? I went to say 3 and then I went to 9. Nine glasses of wine a night. Just become curious. Stop judging yourself and others, because if you're judging other people, you're really judging yourself. If you judge another human being, it's because something inside of you is not healed and needs fixing. If you judge yourself, then it's just a sign that you feel not enough. And if you feel not enough, I promise you, every area of your life is negatively impacted. So just stop the judgment. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, don't say it to yourself. Start treating yourself like your best friend. Start loving yourself. Dr. Mincola wrote this amazing book called Way of Miracles. And he says, if you lack self-love, go get a picture of your 6-year-old self. And every time you look at it, have 2 thoughts: innocence and deservedness. Because again, none of this is your fault. You just likely aren't aware of it. So how can you change something you're not aware? Diet, same thing. People lose all this weight. They put it right back on. Why? Because they never figured out why they put on the weight in the first place. Is it their fault that 98% of diets fail? No, because diet and exercise focuses on the wrong thing. The biggest part of diet and exercise and maintaining healthy weight is the thoughts you're telling yourself in your subconscious mind.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've heard it's very similar to something I've heard from Tony Robbins about, if you think of yourself as a smoker, you're gonna always kind of go back to that identity, So it's really kind of changing your identity as to how you see yourself, and
Yes.
yeah, neat, very
Yes.
interesting.
And see yourself as an amazing human being, because that's what you are. You may have done things in your life you're not proud of, but the reason you did those is because of stuff that happened in your childhood that was beyond your control. So just forgive yourself. If you're beating yourself up because you're a shitty parent, you're going to continue to be a shitty parent. Did I do everything I could for my kids? No, because I didn't have awareness. So I don't hold on to it, because if I held on to it, I'm never going to get to the place that I want to be. So just forgive yourself. Forgive yourself.
Mhm.
And now that you have a new awareness, this is a great thing about being a human being. Whether you drink, use cocaine, eat too much, you can change tomorrow. Your whole life can change tomorrow. But you've got to take the first step. And that first step is often awareness and the desire to change. If you don't want to change, Me and Tony Robbins in the same room couldn't help you. You've got to want to change.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, exactly. And to know how to, which it sounds like you've kind of figured that piece of the puzzle out. What about some other things, maybe, Brad, that you feel like it'd be important for the audience to know when it comes to kind of recognizing these things and working through them?
Yeah. So, I mean, the self love quiz does an amazing job. Some of the questions on there are do you have trouble experiencing deeply connected relationships? If you're in a shitty marriage, or you've gone from one marriage to the next, or you're in no relationship because they all fail, or you're afraid to open your heart, that's a sign you lack self love. Do you take things personally all the time? Do you always want to be right? My second wife used to always say, you always need to be right. And I did need to be right because I felt inadequate. So I had to prove myself. Do you talk negatively to yourself? Another sign. Are you always triggered? Are you driving around like mad, blowing your horn, flicking people off? Do you have self-destructive behaviors? Do you eat too much, drink too much? Do you have an addiction to anything? Anything.
Hmm.
And that could be working too many hours. I work with a lot of people who work way, way, way too much, even though they have as much money as they need, because they don't feel enough. So they got to keep working and get more, 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 more. But enough is never, you're never going to reach it. So those are some things, those are some big things that you can ask yourself in your life. Look, are you content? Are you at peace? Or is your mind always racing? Do you have trouble sleeping at night? Sleep is an issue of the mind. All of these things are telltale signs that something's not right. And let me tell you, that is not how life is supposed to be. Oh, I can't sleep. Oh, I'm in a shitty marriage, but so are my parents and so are my neighbors. Well, I'm not in a shitty marriage. I'm not in a marriage at all. I'm in a year-long relationship, and it's amazing. And we're growing with each other, and we support each other, and we love each other, and we don't have to fight for each other for our worth. So when there is conflict, we actually talk it through and heal, rather than make it into a huge fight where, with my previous marriages, for 3 days, I would like go cold because I was so hurt. I didn't know how to process it. So those
Hmm.
are all just kind of signs of, could your life be better? And I'm here to tell you that if you're suffering, number one, you don't deserve to suffer and you don't have to suffer. And whether you come to me or not, it doesn't matter to me. It's not going to change my life. But I want you to know, no matter what you've tried, you haven't tried it all until you've tried hypnosis and you've tried this rewiring and you've tried this reinforcing. There is a better way. There's a proven method. I've seen it work thousands of times.
Yeah. And how long have you been working with customers and really coaching people through this process?
A year and a half, and the
Okay.
results that I've gotten have been staggering, just absolutely staggering. From, oh my gosh, I mean, this could be a couple-hour conversation, but hey, it's been 2 weeks since I haven't had a panic attack. Oh, really? That's awesome. How long has that been since you can say that? Never in my entire life.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
just profound shifts. One gentleman came to me a year ago. His marriage was on the brink of divorce. And now he's like, my marriage has completely changed. Did I ever have a marriage counseling session? Did I ever sit down and talk to his wife? Did I ever talk to her at all? Nope, never. What I did, though, is I got him to reconnect to himself and love himself. And now he sees his wife in relationship in a whole different manner. So yeah, a year and a half, and just had, and they're not all, but not everyone likes to speak publicly about it. But there's a lot of video reviews just talking about, the influence and the impact that I've had. I reconnected with someone who I hadn't heard from in like 6 months. She was a mother of 4. And when I don't hear from someone, I'm like, oh my gosh, is there any chance they slip back? And she's like, Brad, I just started a coaching company. I'm helping new moms get their bodies back after having a baby. She's like, I never would have been able to do this. And she was a student of Tony Robbins. She'd gone through every self-help thing. She's like, Brad, I knew exactly what to do. I just couldn't do it. And why couldn't she do it? Because all of those other programs are fixated on conscious and symptoms. She couldn't do it because all the time when she knew what she should have done, her subconscious mind was overruling herself, saying, no, 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 you don't deserve this. You're not good enough. And when she changed that 8 months ago, everything in her life changed.
Wow, that's great. I'm sure that's rewarding as well, just being able to help people through that kind of thing. So
Better than any real estate deal I ever did. Better than any multiple six-figure real estate deal I ever did.
yeah, for sure. Wow. All right. How can people find out more about you, Brad? You
Yeah,
mentioned your
Brad
website,
Chandler.
but
Yeah,
Go ahead.
bradchandler.com and start with the quiz. It all starts with awareness. You got to want to change. So don't waste your time going there if you don't want to change. But if you do, just go there and take the quiz.
Perfect. And when you're not selling real estate or flipping homes or coaching folks, what does Brad do? What do you enjoy?
I
know
love to
golf.
travel. Yep. I love to
Right.
travel. I love to golf. I work out I'm in the gym 6 days a week, hitting the weights and hitting the sauna. I took up kite surfing a couple years ago, as well as wake surfing, where you surf behind the wake
cool.
on a board. And then honestly, this mind stuff and happiness and purpose is so fascinating to me. I mean, you can see my library. And I've read like 50, it's probably 55 books now in the last 2.5 years. Like I spend a lot of time reading because I just want to continue to get better and better and better at helping my clients get the freedom and happiness that they deserve.
Yeah, I've got a couple other questions for you, Brad, that I ask every guest. And, one would be, it's more in line with the real estate side of things, but you can take it however. But somebody maybe that's just starting out in their investment career, or their investment journey rather, what advice could you provide them?
I think just get clear on what you want, just and know what your why is behind it. Because 20 years ago, when I started out, I wanted to make a bunch of money, but I didn't know why. And look, I don't regret anything because everything happens in your life just as it should. But if you can know the why and you can focus more on making an impact and doing something that you truly love, it's so much easier to make money and get good at it. Because I could go for years and go sit on a beach under an umbrella and read psychology books. If you told me to do that with real estate, I couldn't. And so I bet you there's 80% of the people in my space that don't want to do that. They're doing it to help themselves or to make money. And so I'm not that I'm outworking them. I'm out educating myself, and I'm going to, continue to get better and better and better. So when you find something that you really love, just spend time. Don't go pick a real estate investment or any investment. Spend some real time, do the work. You owe it to yourself. Do the work and figure out what's your why. And Simon Sinek's or maybe Simon Sinek or Dean Graziosi, a real estate guy, said, ask why, and then ask why another 6 or 7 times till you get to the real why. Why are you doing this? And again, why? Because it's awareness. So you're going to have an awareness to steer you better in the direction that you truly want to go.
Great. Yeah, I think that's tremendous advice. What about a book recommendation? Obviously, you got quite a few of them behind. It doesn't have to be a real estate book. So,
yeah, I'm going to go with The Way to Love. Has been that's an amazing book, and I got to give you a second one because this one's like nipping at its heels, if not as good or better. And that's called The Way to Miracles. Just phenomenal work that this Dr. Mincola has done with helping people that had illnesses that modern medicine said couldn't be fixed, and he fixed it through diet and turning around those programmed childhood thoughts.
Great. Okay, I have not had that recommendation so far on the show, so definitely we'll check those out as well. Well, Brad, I really appreciate you taking some time to be on the Wealth Flow. I think it's been a good episode. And I think there is just so much people can learn from what you have to teach. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.